Hey everybody. Alright, I'm going to go over some of the foundations of the double wrist lock and Kimura, whatever you want to call it, grip. Because everybody's so caught up on finishing it, and there's a lot to learn about how to control the grip, and different ways to manipulate the grip, and build from there, rather than just looking at it as a simple figure four, okay? So, let me stay down. Okay, great. Alright, so when you're looking for the double wrist lock is, the old official term, term for the Kimura, or I believe in judo it's an udagami or something like that. But a lot of guys always try to grab like base at the wrist. That's not terrible, but I always like to have some manipulation of the hand. I'll show you some different ways here, but I like to be lower at the end, just like you would crank a wrench. You want to be at the end of the wrench. If you get a little too here, the arm is going to get stronger and it's going to be harder to manipulate. So when you grab, I personally like to grab. I know you guys see this a lot with thumb on top. I do transfer it in certain positions, but I don't initially grab like that, because here I only have one direction of the grip. When I grab like this, I have multiple directions of the grip, because there's more I can bail on this double wrist lock and go to something else, okay? And plus, I like this because it gives me good manipulation of the joint. It allows me to kind of foundationally break things down. I can even grab fingers, and I can do all types of stuff. So it's good to start off with a good grip, Now your figure four hand is gonna wrap around, and it's gonna try to cover at the highest point of your own hand. You don't wanna be down here, and you sure don't wanna grab, okay? Like with your thumb around. So you want to make sure you're covering. So the way I look at it is you're going to grab, you'll lace the arm, and then cover at the highest point. So if I'm here and I figure four this lock, I go under and over, I want to try to cover at the highest point, okay? I don't want to be here, that kind of space. If there's space here in between your grip, you don't want to have any space at all. You don't even want that much space here, because that much space, he feels it. So you want to have what this push-pull concept, and I'll get into this in a later period in DVD, is when I lock this, I don't want to just pull. I actually want to pull and push my forearm out. And as I do that, I roll my wrist. Okay, so I want to get some good push-pull pressure on his forearm. He's gonna feel some pain on the radial nerve, but that's not necessarily like the point of the lock. I'm just trying to get as much control of his limb as possible. His limb is very powerful and it's very coordinated. So all that together, you gotta really pay attention. If I'm creating some space here, he can feel that, and there's gonna be room for mistakes. So when you hit your lock, one, cover at the highest point, push your forearm out, and I like to now try to turn everything to the right direction. Now, some people like to keep the palm on the mat. It just depends on how well your grip is and where your grip is, okay? The other thing that you'll hear a lot is people keep it at 90 degrees. Now, there's some theories here. My flexibility is gonna be at its best, just stay there, if my hand is more bent. See how my elbow's low? So if my arm's bent like this, I can actually put my hand behind my back. But now if you elevate my shoulder, see how it's high like elevate my elbow. So it's like high like my shoulder. My flexibility is not there at all. So it's actually gonna break better out here. The problem with this is if you're not keeping the arm chicken winged enough, your opponent's got a lot of different ways. He's gonna fight like hell to get his arm strength or straight, or to manipulate it or rotate it. And the other thing is the spin, which we'll get into later. So I always like to do this. Like when I get the figure four, my big thing is I like to get tucked under the rib cage. So I'm gonna allow some flexibility in the shoulder because it's gonna give me dominant control. I'll make that trade. If I lock here, you gotta remember, I'm a heavyweight. Heavyweights, they're strong arms. If I'm here like this, the chances of him straightening it are a lot higher, or using his knee inside to break my grip. All that's available. But when I chicken wing it, now I can jam it under his own back. And now that allows me to do is when I have this here, I got a nice tight grip. Now I can then move his elbow up higher. But now I have his body. I can feel where he's at. I have his hips. I know where he's at. And the other thing is I'm protecting myself from his own knee. Okay, so I got a nice tight chicken wing grip. This just kind of makes it hard for him to move. And his defense is going to be down a lot. Don't worry, I'll break it. That's the way I look at it. I'll eventually break it. But I want to have that nice control. I think it's worth the sacrifice. So if you're out here and you're doing good with your Kimuras, that's great. But keep in mind, you know, with heavyweights especially, or strong guys, when it's here, they're so close to straightening their arm, you got to have a lot of control. The other thing is the leg can get involved, the hips can get involved. So I personally like to keep that chicken wing right under the rib cage. So when you get your lock, I lock it in and keep it nice and tight. Now, I'm trying to create some space so you guys can see here. He can feel the pressure on his forearm right now. It's uncomfortable for sure. So that's one style of grip that I prefer. Now, if I'm postured like this, I'm keeping my elbow on his hip just for control. But if I'm down on the ground, I put my elbow on the mat and I jam it tight behind his back. You know, I just like that. And the reason, are you okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so right here I have his hip, so he can't shrimp away, he can't get his leg involved, and now I'm in a lot of control, and then once I cover his upper body, the arm's gonna break, okay? So the other thing about this is, you see how my elbow to wrist follows his spine? Worst case scenario, if I can't get the elbow high enough to impinge the shoulder, I'm in a straight line to just push it, okay? Here, push it. If I'm out here, I'm not in a good position to push it, and if I'm not in good control of his hips, he's gonna constantly move away as well. So that's the other benefit. So when you're here and you lock it, and now I have this, it's very hard for him to straighten his arm. It's basically pinned with one hand, and you can see here's his shoulder. It's very easy for me to now elevate his elbow above his shoulder, and now there's less flexibility. Like if this roles were reversed, there's no way I could put my hand on the mat, could my shoulders. He's definitely more flexible. So if I'm locking this and I'm gonna stay postured, I like to keep that frame to protect myself. If I'm going to the mat, I tuck the back. I get nice control, and then I'll put some body weight on him and cover the upper torso. Now, there's some tricky ways. A lot of guys like to pull. That's okay. I'll cover a couple ways of this. They like to pull. I like that. That's not a terrible move at all. Okay? Now, the thing with the grip, you've got to constantly remember, is that the hand that grabs the wrist has a job. The hand that grabs your own hand or wrist has a job. And it's not necessarily the same job. This hand has a job to keep the arm from being extended. It's supposed to be to keep it bent. Okay? The hand that grabs my own hand is the hand that actually breaks the limb. Okay? So when I'm here, if you try to think, sometimes push, like you saw me do it a certain way. The reason why I did that, because I made it a straight line so I could not screw up my own technique. But a lot of guys, what they do is they try to push the Kimura. So when they lock it, they get it nice and good, and then they go to push it. See how they push it like that? Now, there's a straight arm Kimura, which I'll get into, but you got to be very careful about that. You don't want to push, all right? It's like throwing a baseball. You throw it, you're throwing it away, all right? So be very careful of that. Keep this bent. This arm does the damage, okay? Now, from here, elbows in, and then you can do the row, okay? Meaning that you're paying attention, not so much with this, you're paying attention with your elbow, and you're trying to pull the arm, okay? My hips and my upper body has to either pin the shoulders or cover the skull, because the natural movement of the body is to go with the pressure, and the upper torso is gonna come up, okay? So I have to have some control, Either the most common is a high leg to cover the head. Others would be to put your knee down. That's the old catchway. I'll get into that. And then sometimes you have good frog hip pressure over the other shoulder. And then we'll go into north-south versions. This, anyone that has some experience with Kimuras or things like this, it's pretty familiar things, okay? So you gotta be careful. So when I lock this, bend, if I'm staying postured, down, pop the hips, now I cover. Now when I cover, a lot of guys cover like this. Now I always cover. You wanna have some pressure down in the skull. Now here, you can pull. Now I'm gonna show you something I learned, and it's very, very simple. And it's kind of more of the catch method, and that is something, we'll get in more, I'll show you the Billy Robinson grip. I'll rotate this over to a fist, but my wrist is gonna hook a little bit, okay? Just like if you're a terrible shooter and you're jerking the trigger, okay? I only made myself laugh and every other shooter that understands that kind of tactic. Okay, lock it here, but now I put my wrist over like that, and I hook this. And what this does, and it takes the flexion out of my own wrist. So the downside about grabbing like this is that this wrist, if it's not strong or he's strong, this wrist is gonna bend. And now you have a more of a hinge. The other problem is that the soft part of my tissue is down, which is another issue that can cause not as much control. So when I rotate this, now it's the most natural, it's like an ice pick grip. It's very natural, it's just straighting, it takes very little energy, was something Billy was all over me about. Paying attention how much energy you use on finishes and locks. And once you cover it, it's as simple as extending. It's as simple as extending. And believe it or not, it's actually very hard to unlock. I've never had someone strip my grip because it's pretty strong, especially once you start learning other different grips. So, I bend it, I lock, I keep the cover down. Now watch, I'm just gonna rotate my wrist. Here, rotate it, and just extend it. Okay, it's pretty simple. If I was out here, and I had, let's say I had this grip, and now things are bad, it's extended. Okay, I prefer to keep it here, just extend it. It doesn't take, there's no big motion, it's just extension. Very little energy, very, very little energy. Now, a lot of times in the catchway, you'll see guys, they'll lock this stuff out, make it nice and tight, then they'll put this knee on your head, and then they just straighten it. And now what that happens is that it keeps the head pinned, and so the shoulder pops quicker. The big thing, if you're gonna do that, okay, because it's a great method, you gotta keep your hip low on the other side. Because good grapplers, what they'll do is they're gonna whack you in the tailbone and send you on your head. So you gotta be very careful and make sure your hips are nice and low. So if I'm gonna do kind of that catch style, instead of stepping over, but dropping my knee down on the head, okay, I'm gonna try to keep my hips way low back here. That way, I'm nice and balanced, and I'm not up tall, and he can bump me over, okay? So let's rotate you a little, perfect. So if I'm here, I have my lock, you can cover knee, but if you want to do it the old catch way, put that knee down, keep that hip nice and low, but don't sit on the mat, stay on your toes, and then extend it. It will pop it very quickly, all right? And there's some rude things you can do. You can turn the head with your knee, cause more impingement on the shoulder. You can do a couple different things there to make the situation much, much, much worse, okay? Now, I want to get into the actual foundations of some of the double wrist lock like I originally started, okay? Again. Now, when you do this lock, I know this segment's a little long, but this lock has a lot of history, and I was fortunate to learn it, and if you're passionate about it, I'd like to teach it. It's supposed to be a 3-joint lock, okay? Wrist, elbow, shoulder. That's what you're aiming for, the 3 locks, okay? And there's a few different grips you can use to attack all 3. If one, and the theory is, that at least that was illustrated to me, you can jump the pressure, change the pressure to target a certain limb, joint rather, or the weakest part of the arm, either one of those joints, whatever is weakest will go first. Now, you saw me grab, and I said I like to grab the palm. So if you can get a little more on the hand and grab the thumb pad, that's good. It's a little hard in MMA, I'll be honest. My hands are nice and big, so I got a nice good grip here, and I'll just rotate the wrist. You see how I rotate that? I kind of gimp it up. And what this does, it makes the arm already much, much weaker. Okay? So instead of keeping the palm down necessarily, now I'm going to rotate it here. Now I have this, I can keep the similar grip, everything's the same, but now he has to contend with some other issues now, because there's a wrist lock present, and now I can just start to crank here. So I can attack the wrist. If the elbow's weak, it will go. If the shoulder's weak, of course that will go. But I always have the wrist. And it's much harder for him now to straighten his arm if the wrist is gimped like this. Much, much, much harder. So if you get it, I call it throttling. You throttle like you're riding a motorcycle. Throttle it and keep the wrist bent. It's a different style. It's kind of the older style. And it can work too if guys try to take it straight. So if they try to take it straight out, now it's very easy to break that wrist. So even though I may use this, keep it nice and gimped and look for my finish, if I feel trying to straighten it, I just take it out and now the wrist is gonna go. It's a very uncomfortable position in general. So that's one method, okay? The other way is to reverse that throttle. Now, coaches that taught it to me, they were always grabbing fingers because 4 fingers is legal, not that they cared. Gene LaBelle taught it to me by grabbing the hitcher, Kimura with a thumb lock, all right? So they got some characters out there, okay? And what you can do, it's a little tricky, but if you get it, you get the wrist to flex and you throttle. Even if you can't get the fingers like that, you can try to get like a palm-to-palm grip and catch the thumb pad and do a throttle. See how he's tapping a little bit? That's just because I was able to get like a high 5 position or a low 5, and I'm just throttling, and he's feeling it in probably the elbow and the wrist. Okay? So here or fingers. And you do the same lock. That's 1, throttle, 2, and now, once again, if you're dealing with 1, 2, 3, which one is going to go first? Well, it's a very, very dominating position. That's why I kind of get disappointed when I see such great grapplers teach the Kimura, and they're so awesome at all these different transitions, but the foundation of the grip has a lot of history and there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think with the community that we have, especially today, they're bringing back more and more of that old style. I think they should continue to learn this stuff before the old timers are gone, because in other words, you're not going to be able to find them anymore. You're going to have to rediscover everything again. All right, so whether you grab here and you're looking for a foundational lock, or you're trying to go a little old school and trying to make it a multi-joint, throttling one way or the other, try to look at this as a nice strong figure 4, and always make sure there's tension on the forearm, make sure it's uncomfortable, and make sure you have control, okay? So make sure you're having control. I can't present that enough, okay? And don't, when you're doing your lock, try not to over lean. That will get you in some trouble down the road too. Keep the weight on your hips, okay? The weight is on your hips. All right? And once we start changing some of the locks, I'll show you where to move your chest, okay? So that's a nice start. Some of the foundations of the double wrist lock. Okay guys, now I'm gonna teach you guys the kind of the straight arm version. Coaches, if you have heavyweights, it's important that you teach them this, because heavyweights they're very strong, and a lot of times in their experience, they smell like everybody else, they smell the Kimura coming on. They're just so powerful that they're either able to rotate the wrist and straighten their arm, and then it's very difficult to bend it. So what you need to do is you need to redirect it. And that's what I'm going to show, and I'll show my own versions of it. Okay. When I say I show my own versions, meaning this is how I understand it to be, this is how I apply it in my personal style, okay? So, being a heavyweight, I train with a lot of heavyweights. Straightening the arm is a very common thing, so we're going to get into that. So, I lock it here, and he's able to straighten his arm. Now, what I'm going to do here, I want to keep that palm down. Like, it's so imperative. If he rotates his wrist, then like I have to transfer it. It's not going to get there. Okay? I want to keep that palm down. And I want to keep thy wrist covering. I don't want to have that space. Like, you got to avoid that. That space will make your grip weaker than it could, so fast. Try to get flesh to flesh here on the forearm. So now when he straightens it, what I want you to do is not try to fight it. If you can't bend it, it's not going to get bent. So redirect it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it. Now, I'll show you the side mount version. I think it's okay, but I'll show, then I'll get into a different side. Okay. All right. So he straightens it. Now, what I'm going to do is I don't want to be up here. So I'm going to shift. I'm literally going to push myself low and get chest on chest. When I do that, I'm going to get my hips way out and I'm going to get on my toes. And I'm going to cover his shoulder. Now, if I can, I'll just start to creep. All I'm going to do is I'm going to start walking it up. Okay? So if I'm here like this and he straightens it, I sink, cover, walk it up. Okay? And what I'm doing is I'm spiking it. And I'll show this from other positions too, but it's a different type of shoulder lock, okay? But it works the same way. You'll get taps, okay? So they straighten it, take it up. You can see that's about as far as I can take it up. So you just gotta make sure your hips are nice and low. You're locked out, okay? Chest is covering the chest, so you have good torso pressure. Hips are frogged out. And I like to kind of keep my knee here to block, whether the head or the arm, depends where he's at on his defense on this side. And take it straight out. Once you get it high enough, you'll feel a little rotation will benefit you, but you don't want to over rotate it. You don't want to get him moving around. You just want to tilt it. Now what I like to do here is I like two-step to mount with it. And the reason for that is because if he tries to do something insane, I want to make sure I'm in a good position. But the other part is I can add a way more force to my lock, especially when I'm trying to break it. If I don't feel like I can break it, I don't think it's worth it. That's my attitude. Because this all stems from, supposed to be from a real fight, right? So, I lock it. He straightens it. Now, what can happen here, instead of sinking, what I'm going to do is rotate. So he's here, I'm going to keep myself, I'm going to try to move it, my knee's going to hit his body, and I'll put my weight on his skull. I'm going to high leg and grape, and then I'm going to sprawl my hips out and get double grapes. I'm not going to bust them out necessarily, I like to curl, or if I need to, I'll grape them out. Now I'm going to come nice and high with this, so I got lots of chest pressure, his hips are busted out, he's got my pressure into his diaphragm, and this is just gonna rip. I can 100% break this, and I can transition it into other great positions. So the thing I want to do here is to keep myself from getting, countered. I like to throw some weight on his head, keep my weight, and when you hook this spur and lock, this will be your lifeline. So now as you start to pull yourself through, now this hook can come in. Try to let this leg help pull yourself in, okay? So, I'm here, he straightens. Can't seem to get it. Cover the skull, high, get my hips in. Now I'm frogged out. Now I'm gonna take it up. You can see how there's space off the ground? I can really torque this thing. Really torque this thing, and if it slips or something, I'm not in the worst position. I'm in a nice strong hip position, nice strong athletic position. Okay? So that's a nice little adjustment you can do, whether you stay side mount or go mount with it to finish that straight arm version. And if they're heavyweights, expect this. Especially if you're a little guy going with heavyweights, expect this. Okay? Okay guys, I'm gonna cover now, some people call it the power grip more, that's fine. It's just it's a nice tight grip. I like it a lot, especially on strong guys. A good friend of mine, George Santiago, uses it constantly. He's had a lot of luck with it. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it, but I just want to teach it to you guys because how I do the pressure I think is important. Okay, take position. So there's advantages to this a lot because it's a very strong grip and you're going to keep the arm very bent. All right, so I'll teach you guys some intros into it in a little bit, but I want you to understand the foundation of the lock. And I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go crook. The crook of my elbow is a big part of this because the crook of my elbow is a dead end. Okay, and now when I'm here, I like to create that nice forearm. See how I'm straight here? If I bend it like this right now, it's not going to really help me. I want to keep that nice and painful grip and lock. And I'm going to go tricep and elbow. Okay? Now, what a lot of people forget about this grip is that they keep this pocket. You want to literally hug this into your chest. So right now, I can tell my forearm is burning into his forearm right now because I'm using the ridge part of my wrist. I mean, on my forearm to the fat side of his. So this right now, once I hug it, there's no way in hell he's getting this arm straight. Now, how to get in position? It's pretty kind of simple. I just try to I believe in being brutality. I'm not gonna do some fancy cruise by. Like if a guy's giving me static, I'll pop my hips, but I'm just gonna grind. Now, I like to smooth my head to the other side and position my hips to the other side. What I like to do is I like to drop my hip here and turn his head towards the joint. This is bad news for him. It's gonna break, okay? Very, very powerful grip. And I actually put my hip down. Some people, you can put the hip on the other side of the shoulder, that will work. But you can still cover the other shoulder and you can get some success with it too. It doesn't matter, it will work. But I like to drop my hip right on his face. And if I have to, I'll drag my body across it, all right? Nothing illegal about it. Okay, nice and up, hug it tight. Now I'll come and then I go and I just start to grab. See how I'm turning his head? You okay? Mm-hmm. It takes very little pressure. And all I'm doing is I'm just doing this, I'm doing the same motion I showed you guys from here, the ice pick. Doing the same thing, ice picking. I'm not doing this big dramatic motion, I'm not trying to pull or anything. I'm just covering and straight. That's it. Just boom. You can get in situations where a guy has his hands locked or his hands on the inside. So his hand did not get out to the outside, it's in the inside. As long as the elbow is, the hand is not like across the body. If you have a nice little window of gap here, you'll still get it. You'll still get it. So even though this is not ideal, the pressure is strong enough that once I go here, it's still gonna work. You just don't wanna be to the point where you're here, is this not worth digging out, okay? So, anytime you're locking this, and you're going to lock your figure four, you can just slide this. Just let that thumb rotate, turn your palm, slide and grind, lock and hug. Don't create this pocket, you guys will regret it. Okay, you're so close to finishing, so hug. Right now, I can tell the pressure alone right now is pretty tight. And then now I start to just grind my way past. It doesn't take much. Even if I get stuck, I end up mounting, I can still create pressure. Okay? So, if you focus on having a good grip and using that wrist cranking pressure is gonna make your grip pretty mean. I love this grip. I think it's a great high percentage move, whether you're doing MMA or grappling. Okay? Okay guys, I'm going to go into what people refer to as key lock, Americana, and also the top wrist lock, okay? So, perfect. Alright, so, very similar. It's an upward arm crank, alright? We'll get into some different grips. I'll teach you guys the stories about this. Now, the most common way to teach this is, if I had to teach it in a more basic kind of way, is I want to have a nice high position. My big thing anytime I'm side mount, I always kind of want to cover. I like pinning. I don't know why, I just like pinning. I just think it sucks for them, okay? But let's go over to the basic grip. Once again, I like to get a nice grip. I always like to rotate the lock. Every single time I like to throttle. So meaning I like to grab this thumb pad, okay? I like to grab the thumb pad. If you're just on the wrist, that's okay too. You're just not going to get the benefit of the elbow knot and other things. So now I'm going to make the same kind of grip. I want to go nice and tall. You see how I'm like covering, I'm literally covering my own hand. I want to get nice and high. And the other thing here is I want to have this elbow dig into his neck. That's very important. A lot of guys are out here and they don't realize that they're hurting themselves. This has to go against his neck. This creates a frame. And I want my other elbow against his body. This is a very common version. And then all I have to do, you're going to see here, is I just have to basically flex my wrist and he's tapping. And that's to me is a top wrist lock. There's other versions where you can try to choke up, all right, where you do a choke up. Now, the only thing about this I don't like is that it separates my hand grip. So I don't have that 2-in-1 pressure. Some guys will like come here, they'll lock it like this, and they pull it in, okay? But I like to have that hand cover. And this pressure right here, now I'm basically in a multi-joint lock. You can see that if I don't get this crank, I can just lean forward. And see how the wrist lock starts to happen? And this is where we're kind of getting into the basics and now getting into the double wrist, top wrist lock. So when you're locking this, nice and tight, and then you have your finish. But if you can get that throttle, get that throttle. Like I'll probably make them tap right now, just the throttle, you know? So if you can get that thumb pad, there you go. Cover it. Now, you see how my shoulder, I like to stay short, you okay?
Yeah.
My elbows come in, my shoulder comes to the top of the joint. By doing this now, I can rotate his wrist and tuck it. So now a simple adjustment of my weight from my legs, this wrist is gonna pop. See, takes no energy. Just top wrist lock, basically. Well, one of them. All right, so whether you're trying to lock, we'll get into different setups, or counter a frame and lock. If you can get fingers, just like I taught you before. There's other different grips here too, but that's the basics. That's my favorite. Cover, that way I get the wrist. Now, kind of the old school version that I prefer is a real good lock, and we'll get into it. I'll probably have to do this from a different angle, but it's gonna start from basically a good, like a normal high side position. I like to counter, I'm a big grabber of the upward grip, and I'll get into that when I get more into the techniques, okay? So whether someone's on a frame or whatever the case is, I like to push, lock, okay? Now, from here, what I'll do, especially like a lot of times I'll hook up a cradle. For example, this is a common position for me. So we'll teach it from here, okay? I'll be in a far side cradle, nice and tight, the arm is behind me, and I'm either pulling this arm through or I'm locking this wrist up. So what happens now is I get this wrist, okay? So now I pin and I catch. Now I release the leg and I go under, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover my own, and I'm making a wrist exchange. So instead of grabbing my own wrist and just going for that finish, I cover the wrist itself, and this hand goes onto the pec. See, I'm on his shoulder, so I go around his head and I dig onto his pec. And all I'm gonna do is I'm basically gonna keep the weight, and I get my hips out like this, and now I'm just gonna kind of get a classic lock, okay? So the head is being elevated, the wrist is getting twisted, okay? And my one arm is just doing this, it takes no effort. So if you lock, wrist exchange, there it is. I like it a lot. Mount. That's good, I think. where I'm mount and I'm working and I'm either trying to punch or whatever the case is. Now I re-exchange the lock, cover up, and now I bring this out, he's got the wrist too. So I got multiple attacks here. I got nice control, and his head's off the mat, so his bridge is gonna be crap. So I'm in a good position. So this is kind of the old school. Sometimes you'll meet some old school catch guys. That's how they'll teach it. I use it a lot. I think it's pretty neat. But that's just a basic overview of a upward arm crank and what I call a top wrist lock. Okay? So try around with some of those versions, and I think you guys will have some good luck with it. The wrist lock details, I think, are yet to be discovered. And once it hits, I think people are gonna really jump on it. Because once it's bent, it's bad news bears. Okay guys, I'm gonna go over the foundation of one of my favorite bent arm lock Kimuras, and I just call it it's from a 2-on-1 Russian, but I just call it a Russian Kimura, whatever you want to call it. It's just basically it's fighting like you would a Russian 2-on-1. I do this from standing, I do this from all types of positions. I'll hopefully get into a little of the setups, but I want you guys to understand the foundations of the lock, because it's such a great lock. Okay, I'll teach it a couple different ways, because based on where he's at, it will dictate how I grab a lot of the times. But basically it's this arm. So don't see how I'm getting into it, it's irrelevant. I'm just showing you the foundation of the lock, so I don't have to reiterate it when I teach it. So I'm gonna teach it with a basic grip, okay, which is here, okay, and I'm gonna lock my wrist, see, under, like that, okay? So in this case, my wrist is gonna hook under, and I'm basically going here. All right? And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add my head position, I'm gonna keep the arm benched, and I'm just gonna do ice pick. That's it, okay? So if I'm here, I like to keep a good head position, and I just ice pick. That's it. So I'll be off my knees most of the time, or I'll be chest on chest, and then there it is. Okay? Now, the power version is what one I tend to lean towards is here, but when I go to finish it, it's here. Same thing. It's just I'm choking up on the bat a little bit. So I'm here. This hand now, instead of being on top, a lot of guys like to be on top here, but things are reversed. So this hand's gonna go in my armpit. So if I'm here, this hand's gonna go in my armpit. Okay? And it's gonna grab my lat muscle, and I'm gonna grab my own elbow. Okay? So I'll be here. I got good pressure. He can't extend his arm, he can try. And now I'm gonna ice pick. That's it. Their other version that I'll do, this is mainly from a different position. Just sit up a second so they can see. This will be not an ice pick version. It will be, I'm basically coming through, but instead of like going on, I know this is very popular, I'll show that again, but instead of ice picking it, I'm gonna grab my own wrist and I'm gonna be here. So in sitting positions, this one's nice because all I have to do is basically keep good pressure and curl, and he's gonna tap. Let's turn that. Yeah, so in that particular version, instead of being hammered like that, I'm gonna cup. So it's like I'm literally holding it in place. So this is a nice control. And then from this position, I fight with my head and I'll pull, and then I'll pull it, and now he's gonna go. Okay, but I'll show you some situations for this, because there are some setups on how I get into the various grips, and if I figure four it, or lock it, or I go all the way through. So this style is a big part of my game. I love this technique. I've been doing this for a long time. Been teaching it for a long time, and I do it standing all the way to the ground. So there's a lot of variations of it, but it's a foundational lock. I'm hoping it catches on because I think it's awesome. I've had some friends that are very good at working near side Russian 1-on-1s and wrist lock sweeps and stuff with it. I'd like to keep something. I like good old fashioned grips, nice powerful grips, stuff that I can use on high athletes. So that right there, the foundation of that is a very simple lock, but it's not common yet. And hopefully I'll be able to show you guys some more setups to it, because it's a great lock, but understanding it and how it works is very good. Because I see a lot of guys teach this, and there might be some validation with that and how it works, but to be honest with you, I wouldn't do that too much. I wouldn't do that. I would definitely lace it the way I showed you. It's much more powerful, brutal, more effective. And don't ever think brutality isn't technique, because everything I do is considered legal. I'm not poking guys in the eye. I'm just, when you move the head a certain way, it causes the shoulder to impinge more. Some people call it brutal because it hurts more, you know, but it's all technique. It's all the same thing. Okay, you want his wrist, his radial nerve there to burn like hell. You want that. If you don't want to do that, then, you know, maybe I'm not the guy you should be buying DVDs from. All right, so that's just my Russian version of the Kimura. Okay guys, I'm going to show a grip that I learned from the late great Billy Robinson, who's, in my experience, I think he's probably the most technical catch wrestler I've ever met in my life. And he was a wealth of knowledge, grappling, wrestling, all sorts. Real interesting man. And it's too bad that he passed, but he lived a long, full life. So I call this the Billy Robinson method, or the Billy grip. And it's just a different way of doing a Kimura. And it's an in-between position between like the figure four that you're used to and that power, the deep grip. It's an X grip there, and I love it. So like if I know I need to keep pressure on a guy, just move your legs a little bit. Like I might start my Kimura, especially if I know he's gonna spin, I don't wanna create a big circle. It's gonna give him a bigger circle to get that elbow through. Exactly, so I wanna keep this tight, and now I might over chop it a little bit. It might look like I'm going for the rear naked choke kind of position, but what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna hook my elbows. I'm just gonna go hook, and I'm gonna go hook. So I'm just hooking like this, all right? And this is gonna keep it nice and tight. Now when I'm ready to do the lock, I'm gonna turn both wrists so the hard parts are vertical. So I'm not now using the cushion part, I'm using the hard part. It creates a tense pain feeling, and it's very strong. And it's great for rushing. Like if you're rushing around with your grips, you're like, I gotta go, I just go Billy. So I'll just go here, and I'll just go, pop. Now I lock my grip. So I got a nice big hook. I don't have to clumsy around with grips. And now when I'm here, and I'm ready to go for my lock, okay, I just pull my wrist, and I finish like this. It's just simple. So I'm here, but it can also help break grip sometimes. If you get in a lock of grip, and I'm here like this, and he's got a grip, but I'm able to stop him from spinning somehow, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna rotate that same pressure, and he's gonna let go. Can you see that? So all I'm doing, hold again, sorry about this, I'm here, I'm hooking, now I turn my wrists, and when I turn that, he feels that hard, and now I'm going to extend, and this, by extending, see how that elbow comes up, and the hand goes in, it makes the grip very hard, like I'll get his grip broke. So if he's here, and I'm like this, he's gonna tap. He's gonna tap. So that's a different way you can use to break the grip as well, and on the trying, you know, if I'm doing like a Kimura arm bar, sometimes I'll do it that way too. So it's a great Kimura setup. Grip, okay? That's the Billy method.